welcome back.
You're listening to the Synchronicity Podcast. I'm Nicole.
And I'm Megan.
It's cold in here today.
It is cold in here. Freaking studios.
Currently 3 degrees out.
Yay, party.
Even though our studio is cozy, it's not cozy right now. Anyways, we are the Synchronicity Sisters. We change your brain to change your life. We take old programming, give you a new perspective, pretty much tell you that what you were given in childhood can be fixed, and there's a healthier, better way to do it than what your parents did, and you get to be a better version of yourself in adulthood is pretty much what we do and help you with.
Yeah, and we use microdosing. We ran ayahuasca retreats. We believe in the psychedelic movement, and that's where we got our original start. But unlike the majority of people that work in that, it's not take a pill and fix it. We give you the programming and the framing behind it to make it actually worthwhile and what you need to change into. Because if you don't know how you need to change or what you need to change, how are you going to change? That's always been my question to these humans.
Pretty much make you get really curious about yourself, or we really piss you off and you turn our podcast off. That's about what happens.
But if you're new here, welcome. We're so grateful that you're here. If you're coming back for more, we're super, super grateful. We wouldn't be here without you guys, and we have endless gratitude for our clients and the people that support us. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And we appreciate all people that are trying to do their best and change in this crazy world, because you're making the world a better place, believe it or not. So today we're talking right along those lines.
You were very psychedelic.
Right? I'm wearing a shirt from the 70s.
I dig it. I like it.
Yeah. It has hat ladies on it.
All right, squirrel. I'm very squirrely today. Back to our original paid programming.
Is it paid? We're talking about potency versus power. And it's a really interesting topic because I only, in my original framing, only knew power. Right? Power struggles in relationships, power struggles in society, power struggles in humanity. We're seeing that just on full blast right now. We saw it during COVID. We're seeing what the fight for power does. It's a very every man for themselves, patriarchal bullshit. I don't mean to say that I hate men. I actually do not hate the patriarchy, but I will say that this fight for power is very masculine, and it's a downfall of the matriarchy not being equal to the patriarchy, because feminine, or the matriarch, is very about community and about connection and about how do we do this together. Men can be very lone wolf. I got this. We're going to do it my way. And they learn from women how to be inclusive.
Facts.
And that's where the feminine really thrives. And we teach this or guide the masculine into it more because this is not a strong thing for them. Feminine fights for potency because we want what's best for the whole. Power is fighting what's best for the individual, and that is an ugly place to be.
Well, and power can be, by nature, power is more masculine.
Absolutely.
Because it, back in the day, and even, like, obviously modern culture has shifted tremendously, but even now we're seeing masculine fighting for power. Like, world leaders, the power struggle is mainly masculine, where the potency is in the household by the mother. So I just want to clarify that potency is created by feminine, power is created by masculine, but the feminine allows for the masculine to step into potency over power.
Well, but you're seeing, there's not a whole lot of feminine left. That's what we're here fighting
Facts.
for. The feminine has completely lost its way.
They've all become men.
We have collapsed into the masculine.
Yeah.
And we have male-born children trying to guide the feminine, and I don't even know what the hell that is. Again, there are male bodies that have feminine cores and have feminine essence, but it's the minority, for sure, just like there are female bodies that have masculine cores, but again, totally minority. A lot of this is just trauma-driven. and people with PTSD and a lot of just very, very dysfunctional families that have caused the collapse of the feminine. And so women grow up being men, and men grow up being cherished by their mothers because the parents are not in love. They don't know how to negotiate. They don't know how to fight for potency. So you see the collapse of marriages. And the most important thing you will ever do for your child is the relationships that you showed them, right? The relationships that you carry on in your life is what the child will look at and copy. So, you can say as much as you want, but mirror neurons, it's more about what you do than what you say. Sadly, because I know the entire baby boomer generation is do as I say, not as I do. Which is a fucking crack up.
We covered that in the last podcast about communication and how to step out of that.
Say that over and over again because we lead by example. Yes. So just remember that you're the goal. Your relationship is the goal to your children. And it's highly, highly important that when people have kids, that they still put their relationship on a pedestal, essentially, and make sure that's an important part because it's kind of the North Star for your children and how their relationships are going to be and things like that. And showing your child how to fight for potency and not a power struggle between two parents. We witnessed fights and fights and fights for power in our household.
Our parents were both alphas.
Even if you have to, and we will cover this, but
even
if you have two alpha parents,
literally out of control alphas.
But what that did to us is I thought love was a battleground.
Power struggle.
It was awful.
Power struggle.
I used to think that love had to be a fight, and I don't believe that anymore. But
that's what you were taught.
But that's what I was taught. I thought it was normal to scream at each other and. Nicole and I would be hiding in her room, and it was awful. And I was like, "This." I remember even thinking as a child, "Oh my gosh, this is terrifying,
this is wild."
So as I grew up, I was in very volatile relationships because I thought that was normal. And then, as I started to heal and do my work and realize, my parents just didn't know any better. They were modeling what was modeled for them by their parents, and their parents both had, very volatile relationships. Alcoholism and mental illness usually go hand in hand in families for a reason. Both are not functioning, and it's hard to see.
Or like our family, where they were both highly functional individuals,
but completely dysfunctional at the same time.
Yeah, it was wild. Our family dynamic should have been studied because, quite frankly, it still to this day blows my mind that what happened to Dad, he came out with no damage because of probably generational trauma.
Generational pickling. He was basically pickled because he's Irish and German, and probably everybody's an alcoholic to some extent.
That story is in our book that will be coming out.
Yeah, well, we're publishing a book this year, so our entire life story is in that book.
And all of our tools and everything.
It's all true.
It's all true.
And it's how we've healed. And it's the story of our tools intertwined with our life.
But side note, we're still healing every single day. We still use the tools every single day.
Never over.
It's never over. That's the life hack of trauma is people are just being human. I don't even call it trauma anymore. I don't associate with that. It's really stepping into that understanding that every single day you use the tools to become a better version of yourself. And you're picking potency or power every day. How are you going to show up?
Yeah. And I can say sitting here today that I'm grateful for all the pain. And that's insane to say. To have gratitude, you've healed victimhood, because what trauma does is it creates victims. And you think that you're a victim to everything, to life, to people, to
life is happening to you, not for you.
Yeah, and we did a podcast on victimhood, but it's just really important to realize, when you take the adversity you have faced and you look at it and you go, what do I want to do with this and who do I want to be? You then learn to use it, and you become potent. You become a force of nature unlike anything you've ever seen, and you don't care what people think, and you don't care what the government's doing or who's doing what, you realize that you are a force and you have a reason for being here, and that you're a soul having a human experience, and that you were divinely guided to be here and divinely picked to be here, in my opinion. And we all have a special life, right? We're all on a hero's journey, according to Joseph, what is his last name? Campbell, and the hero's journey. And so we step into that.
Well, and the thing is that if you look at society as a whole, everyone right now is fighting their own power struggle. Like, whether it's paycheck to paycheck, whether it's victimhood, whether it's whatever, right? Like fear, shame, like all of that is power struggle within themselves and also within humanity. I can only speak for like our current circumstances. Like people always say like, oh, well, I hear people all the time, like especially clients, well, like I'm financially struggling, I'm this, I'm that. And I'm like, okay, well, all I'm hearing you say is that you're in fear of what is next. Because if you are living paycheck to paycheck, or you're in fear of leaving that job or whatever, you have completely succumbed to hedonism. You are collapsed into the material world. You don't believe in a better or higher power at that point, and all you care about is yourself. There's no greater good. There's nothing greater outside of you. So you've completely collapsed into selfishness, and you don't give a fuck about anything else. And that is what power struggle is happening, and individualism that is happening in our society, which, whether if this was planned or not, it's very much individualized when you are fighting for power, where potency is teamwork. And when you step into potency, and we talked about this in the last podcast very briefly about Megan and I's communication and negotiating within our business and just in life, whether she's my business partner, my sister, my best friend, my therapist, my not therapist, like depending on the day, right? Like my shoulder to cry on, or she's crying on my shoulder. It's potency because we're a team. Now, we were taught that early on, it's power. It was her and I against each other. And we had to come out of that because that was a narrative of siblings and, the competition aspect that was placed between us. And through healing that and becoming a team, I care about what's going on in her world, and she cares about what's going on in my world. So then we become a team. Now we're even more denser and we're more potent than fighting individually for power. And quite frankly, power just is all like it eats itself, like you said, with darkness. Like it just devolves into debauchery, ideally.
Well, hedonists destroy themselves.
Right.
Darkness destroys itself because it has no moral or ethics. It has no truth. It has no laws. It lives in just complete chaos. And, hedonists do, right? Yeah. And we live in a world of do what you want, not do what is right, because we don't even know what right is anymore, because it depends on what is right is based off of how somebody feels. And I said this in the last podcast, just because you feel like gravity isn't real doesn't mean if you jump off a cliff, you're not going to die. Like, you don't get to make the rules. But we live in a culture where, we've decided that we make our own rules and that there aren't inherent truths, just like they're not men and women. There's not male or female. That's not, just because you feel like there shouldn't be doesn't mean that it's not true, right? Truth is truth. And it's just crazy that we have essentially have this entire culture of putting power in people's hands, but there's no inherent truth or guide or ethics or morals or anything anymore to guide humanity. And that's a very, 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 very dangerous place to be, because you have no guiding force in your life. And, as somebody that used to be very hedonistic and really material was my God, because I didn't grow up with an understanding of a good God. I grew up with an understanding of a very bad God and a very punishing God and kind of fire and brimstone. So I understood God as fear, not God as love. And, an all-powerful God, not a God of potency that wants humanity to do and be better and thrive, but a God that wanted to punish and be hateful. And it's just a very interesting space to come out of hedonism and come more and more into stoicism every day, because you realize and accept pain. The pain is just a part of life, but when you try to cover up pain with pleasure, which is what most people are doing in their lives with alcohol or drugs or sex or clothes or dating or whatever it is, you're in suffering. When you avoid pain, you suffer. And that's the addiction that we're seeing in our world is at an all-time high. And when you collapse into addiction, mental illness follows. So, we're seeing the power struggle turn into mental illness. And when we start fighting for potency and start realizing how important that is, the power comes back into the individual and creates a strong force to be reckoned with a government that is accountable to the people, not to itself. And we've gone completely on a tangent now.
Well, and the baseline of it, though, is like whether it's big government or your household. If you're fighting for power, you're going to end up in a divorce. Hate to break into you. That's how the law works, because it's a power struggle. And you see it almost all the time, right? Like you will hear people, well, I'm going through this awful divorce. They want blah, 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 blah. And I want blah, 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 blah. And like clearly something went wrong because you weren't fighting as a team for the better good of the relationship. aka for your own government in your household. You did not become a team. You were president, not president and vice president. You weren't working together coherently and negotiating and talking about things. And then your children are going to school and they're being ran under a dictatorship. Most likely you don't even know what's going on because you're in your own bubble and that other person's in their bubble. And there's just pure chaos instead of this very grounded very grounded space. And you're seeing this more and more. Children are being raised on iPads, being, the power struggle in schools. I mean, the fact that the school system, then I can go on a whole tangent about the school system, that one teacher sits up in front of the class to 25 to 30 kids and tells them what to do all day. That is like blows my mind. Like, whoa, I don't know. But that's power, right? Like that's like, do this or else, or you're going to fail.
There's a lot of narcissists in the school system.
Instead of it like being very, like I see like Montessori schools, and it's like those are potency based school systems that are like, okay, like how do we get these children to understand certain concepts as a team? And maybe they're not super like wonderful at math. Maybe one's really good at science and one's really good at art. And like we maneuver their strengths, not shame them and be in this really sick power struggle that then they have no self-esteem and they go out into the world and then they're on a power struggle and it's a whole hamster wheel that like you never get off of until you realize and or hear this podcast that you're on a hamster wheel of power instead of a beautiful like ebb and flow stream of potency in life of becoming a team player.
And I think it just boils down to, do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? To be happy is to be potent, right? It's knowing what battles to fight and when to lay down your swords. And this is why when you date, it's very important from the very beginning to date for character, for men and women, mainly for women. But, when you're choosing a president or a leader, you're not dating because they're hot and they look like Brad Pitt, but they live in their car. They have no ambition. You're looking for a man that you can trust, that even when you don't agree with him, that he is doing what is right, not what he wants. And date a man that you respect, so that you're not having to have these power struggles of, who is this person? And you trust them completely. And you know that their soul and heart is good. So date for character, and you won't get into this because everybody's choosing with their eyes. And hookup culture, people are getting addicted to hormones and oxytocin and all this stuff, and it's just creating chaos and hedonism because you only care about pleasure. You don't care about love.
You're fighting for power. You don't care about anybody else's feelings. You care about your own, and you didn't pick anyone to go and be a team with. Yeah. It's a fun game. But now that we have completely broken down potency and power and probably mind-fucked half of our listeners, if you are watching us on YouTube, did I miss anything? Mm-mm. Okay. If you're watching us on YouTube, like and subscribe and comment. If you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, like us, comment, and rate the show. It helps us tremendously. If you have any comments, concerns, complaints, I don't want to hear them. No, just kidding, I do. If you have a show suggestion, if there's anything you want us to elaborate on or cover, please send us a message or comment or chat with us over at synchronicity_sisters. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.